Right, so it's about a week after I picked up the V70, and unfortunately through various circumstances I've not had much time to do a great deal with it. I thought rather than getting stuck in on cleaning everything and going berserk and then showing you a video, I wanted to go around the car sort of as is, so you can see where I'm starting from and sort of what the condition of everything is, and then I'll sort of outline in this video what the plan is. I'm not going to do a detailed paintwork assessment in this video simply because it's very, very warm today. As you can probably see, it's very, very hot, and I don't particularly want to wash it in direct sunlight, so I'll probably do that later on this evening, and the paintwork assessment will be a future video. But for now I'm going to enjoy a bit more hot brown, and then I'll take you all round and show you how the car is and what we're going to do to it moving forwards. Right then, so time to take a better look at the V70, and I say I'm not going to go in full detail on the paint, but I will discuss a couple of things. You can probably tell from there already we've got some terrific hologramming going on. It's quite a few swirl marks and various other bits and pieces. That's probably partially down to just poor wash technique, but Richard, the previous owner, did torture this car through a number of automated car washers, which I'll include a clip of. So obviously at some point I am going to try and machine polish that out to see if we can improve things. I've also got a couple of areas of lack of peel, and again I'm going to try and do a few bits and pieces with that moving forwards. You may also notice the headlights are quite foggy. Now I've got a couple of options with these. I could replace them, but I think initially what I'm actually going to do instead is I'm going to wet sand them, and then I'm going to try coating them with a 2K clear coat and see if that acts as a more permanent repair. I've seen a few people where they've done that in videos and it's been quite successful, so that's the plan with those. I'm going to do a like I say, a sand down and then a 2K clear coat over the top of it, and then hopefully that'll work. I'll probably take the headlights off the car completely to do that, and that way if for any reason I cock it up during the process, everything's to bits sufficiently enough just to fit a new set of headlights should I need to. I'll probably also upgrade the bulbs to Osram night breaker lasers at the same time, but I am going to stick with the halogens. I'm not going to muck about trying to upgrade the car to xenon units. But like I say, I mean, otherwise it's really not bad on the front at all. I think I've got a tiny bit of trim down there that's missing or not clipped in properly. The grille I might do a bit of a change to, keeping the original V70 style grille but painting it matte black and just leaving the emblem silver. I did that before on a V40 actually, and it looked quite nice, so I may do that moving forwards. One of the hot topics of discussion with this car as well has been the wheels. So I think from the factory on a standard order this car would have come with 17-inch, I think they're called Arestus wheels. I'll probably find I've pronounced that wrong, but whoever's owned this previously, I don't know if it was done at the point of original purchase or whether these were changed later on down the line, has swapped them to these 16-inch steel wheels. They do ride quite well on it actually, and I've actually got a poll running at the moment on my Twitter page to discuss what best to do with these. Do I stick with the 16-inch wheels and try and tidy these trims up, or even buy a new set? There is a more modern set of trims that will fit this, or do I say sod it and revert it back to some alloys, either 16 or 17-inch? So I'm not sure, but I'll include a sort of a little pop-up at the time of recording this video as to what people have voted for so far, but I suspect most of you are going to say stick with these wheels and trims, which I'm not so sure about, but it does give it a little bit of a unique look, so we'll have to see. These tyres aren't too bad either. I've forgotten the brand of them already. That's good. I think they're Samuto BC 500s. They are B rated in the wet, which is probably the absolute minimum that I would I would sort of go for on a sort of a mid-range or budget tyre. I do prefer generally to buy tyres that are A-rated in the wet unless they're all seasons. So we'll see. To be honest with you, the other thing with V70s is they tend to get through tyres, particularly on the front end, very quickly. So I suspect it won't take long before these are worn out. Certainly if I start racking up any substantive mileage on it. Just while I'm in this area as well, you might see I've got a little bit more lack of peel on that front wing as well. I say I've got some plans. I might just try and just literally blow that in with a little bit of new clear coat for now, rather than going too mad, because again, you know, this is a £1,000 car. It's just not worth going to the trouble of, you know, respraying massive sections at this stage, at least until I've verified that everything else is mechanically sound. But yeah, I mean, apart from everything else, the windscreen, everything else seems to be alright. It's free of major scratches and chips. I'm going to try and get some of these little rubber, I forgot what they're called now, these little rubber bits down here. They are available online to replace. And then for the rest of it, it's really not too bad. You've got the usual sorts of little scratches and dents. A lot of them sort of aren't quite fingernail deep, so I think they will come out okay. There is one thing I missed. I actually saw it on my original video, but completely missed it when I put it out, is this rather fetching screw head modification on this piece of rear trim here. Every V70 I've ever looked at always seems to get knocked quite badly on these rear corners. I might try and do something with that. Obviously, I mean, it's in place for now and it doesn't look too bad from a distance, but we'll see. I might see if I can at the very least get a piece of replacement chrome trim just to tidy that up. The tailgate is debadged. It is a 2.5T engine, so that's 200 and, I'm probably going to get this wrong now, it's 210 brake horsepower, I think. I'll put the full sort of specs up for what this engine is, but I might stick a 2.5T badge on the back. And another thing I may do, so I'm quite a fan of the wider sort of Volvo spacing that comes on the later models, so I may swap that badge out for another one. Again, this is all silly cosmetic stuff really that I might not bother with. The other thing I've thought about was this rear screen. So from what I can tell, these are bonded in and changing them would be an absolute nightmare to do. Obviously the rest of the tailgate itself is sound, there's no breakages or anything on it. And again, I'm kind of torn. So I think what's happened in the past is somebody's obviously driven it without a rear wiper on. You can probably see there's a little plastic notch there just on the end, and over time that's just scratched an arc in the rear window. And I suspect that's come about because even if you don't choose to use the rear windscreen wiper, sorry, if it's raining and you're using the front ones, the rear one will come on automatically when you put the car in reverse. So obviously at some point, for whatever reason, and it's baffling given how cheap they are, somebody hasn't sorted that out. But again, I suppose that is part of the car's character, and there is a little bit of me that thinks that even if I get the rest of the car absolutely spot on, I'm tempted to leave that just as a nod to how it was when I very first got it. So let me know what you think about that. You know, if this was yours, would that drive you mad? It's not really noticeable from the inside of the car, but I don't know. It doesn't bother me too much. And again, everything I talk about in terms of the bits and pieces I'll do to this is a £1,000 car, to me anyway, at least at the moment. So I'm not going to go too berserk in fixers. I'm not going to go too mad in searching for replacement parts. It's at best always probably going to be about a 50-yard car. It's never going to be a show winner, but it would be nice to do a few bits and pieces just to tidy it up and lift it. I say, I mean, the rest of it round the back is really not too bad. Cosmetically, the worst side is probably this one, which is the passenger side. So it's had a paint repair done there. Again, there's a few little ripples and marks in it, but nothing too horrendous. It's picked up quite a substantial scratch there, which is a real shame, because I think Richard had this repainted and then this happened afterwards. And then it also managed to pick up a scratch, believe it or not, whilst I was waiting to collect it whilst it was parked up. So that was newly added. Again, I have a feeling I'll be able to buff that out, but we'll see. But yeah, that one's a bit of a shame, because if you look, it's more than just a surface scratch. It has actually dented the door. I am going to talk to a dents guy that I know about a few of the dents on this. Mainly, there's one or two, may not show up on camera at the moment, in the bonnet, which I'd like to get taken out. And I might see if he can sort of, even if he can just get the ripples out, I'm not too fussed about the little scratches, because I've actually bought a touch-up pen, and I'll go into some detail in a minute as to the other bits I've bought. But if I can just get the panels straightish, I can just touch them in and it won't look too bad. So we'll see what we do with that. The other option, I think, would be to get a passenger rear door and maybe even a driver's door in colour. I think the paint code for this is, I think it's a magic blue, 467. I think that's what if I've said that wrong, I'll correct myself on screen in a second. But like I say, I may look for two doors. I may just stay with it as it is and see how we go. You can probably see, although I've not cleaned it yet, there's a very slight colour difference anyway between those two doors, because I think that door must have been painted at the same time that rear quarter was done. So yeah, I mean, externally it's really not too bad at all, and it's cosmetically it's about on a par with another car which I had a V70 1.8S, not V70, sorry, I had a V40 1.8S a while ago, which we called Derby, which I'll include a picture of now. And I spent a lot of time doing a restoration on that, and I bought that really cheap and sort of really lifted it and got it looking quite nice. I think this is actually a better base than that was, so I'm pretty confident I can turn this into, I mean, it is already a nice car, but I think I can really sort of elevate it a bit and make it look loved. Anyway, that's enough waffling about the outside for now. I'll talk you through the interior. Here we go, glorious sea of beige. And as is always the case with these, it's funny, the black steering wheels wear really well, and they can often look nearly new even at relatively high mileage. Sorry, I seem to pick the noisiest day to do this, which is quite frustrating. Like I say, everything is present and correct and working. There's a few of the usual sort of what I would call P2 interior pitfalls. Like I say, light coloured steering wheels always fail. This centre console is painted, and they always sort of chip up and get mucky, so I'm going to try and do something with that as well. And then there's these seats themselves. Now there's no splits or there's no big cracks or holes in them sort of straight through to the foam. That one's sort of getting there, but they really could do with a bit of a recondition and a clean. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at a leather restoration kit. Now the one I'm currently looking at trying on this, I think is made by a company called Colour Lock, and that will include a re-dye for the seats, some filler, some stabiliser, and then obviously anything else that I need to sort of clean them up, prep them and repair them. And again, I think that's one of those things. I've always wanted to try and do a seat repair like that on a car myself, but I've been very wary of doing it on anything more expensive than this, because as this stands, if I make a total mess of this, I could probably relatively easily get another seat out of the breakers in a, you know, similar or close colour. Whereas trying to do it on something like the XC60, if I cock that up, obviously that's a lot more dollar. And that's also one of the reasons I've bought this car, is to have a go at doing some projects like this, where the financial risk is much lower, and the availability of parts, should I need to replace anything if I don't get it spot on, isn't as bad either. But anyway, waffling again. Like I say, I mean, for the most part, everything's pretty good. I think I'll probably replace that volume button on that radio, because that's looking a bit manky. But for the most part, it's really not bad. You know, most of the trim's in pretty good condition, and I think the only broken bit that I know of on the inside is this rear window switch, which is sort of gone all wiggly wobbly. I think the window itself still works, but the actual physical switch is broken. But yeah, like I say, I mean, it's pretty neat and tidy in here. And we've got these original Volvo mats. I don't know what it's like underneath. Oh, look at that, look. Old pound coin. And I'd say going from the indentation in the carpet, but that's been there for some time. So there we go. Yeah, it's got these original rubber mats. I might swap these out for some fabric ones. I'm not the biggest fan of rubber mats in the world, to be honest with you. They're reasonably hard wearing, but I might swap them out, and I'll probably get black ones as well, just for a little bit of a colour contrast. But yeah, as you can see, it's really not too bad in here at all. Even got a load cover, and you know something, this is the first Volvo I've had and borrowed or bought where the load cover doesn't make a ridiculous amount of noise. So much so that I'm actually terrified of taking it out in case it does start making a noise. So that may have to stay in, irrespective of any other work I do. But like I say, I mean, it's all the bits you would expect. Like I say, there's little marks and stuff everywhere, but it's really not bad, especially for a light leather interior. I think this will clean up quite well, as will the carpets. I think what I might do is, I mean, I've got a Vax, but this might be finally my excuse to go and buy a Bissell cleaner and really go to town on the inside of things, getting everything sorted. I mean, as you can see, door cards and stuff, they're all sound, and everything's sort of present and correct and working. Current mileage, because I don't think I mentioned that on the original video, although you may have seen it if you watched it all the way through. So it's done 156,384 miles. So yeah, it's for a 2.5T engine, that is barely running, but I'll get onto the mechanicals in a minute and some of the things that we may need to do on that side of things. So I've got a load cover. Again, I might just get a little bit of fabric spray just to tidy that up a bit, maybe. And then estate cars always lead a hard life, so we'll give that a bit of a clean up and a tidy up. And another unexpected bonus is Richard gave me these roof bars which fit it, which is quite handy. So if I ever get a roof box for it or anything like that, I can throw those on there, which is superb. The other thing I didn't realise, although I must have seen it in the pictures, I think there might actually be another set of seats in there, I'm not sure. So that was quite nice as well. But again, all around the edges of the tailgate and stuff, really not bad at all for an estate car. They always get a bit of knocking and scratching around here, and this is it's really not bad for the age and mileage, and considering the fact that these things generally lead quite a hard life. So yeah, really not bad at all. Now, one slightly unexpected bonus is this car appears to have a full-sized spare wheel. Now, I'm wondering if this is the other reason why the previous owner, or one of the previous owners, specified the car with 16-inch steels, because I think this is the largest size you can get away with fitting in this wheel well. But like I say, it's the same size as all the other tyres, which is 205 55 R16s. So yeah, that's quite a nice surprise, and at least it means I know that if I do find myself in a position where I've got a puncture on one wheel, I can drive the car relatively normally. I mean, spare wheels in general are becoming a thing of the past, and certainly a full-size spare. I've not had a full-size spare since my Lexus IS200, which again rather unusually had a full-size alloy as a spare. Yeah, that's nice to see that in there. I've not had it out yet. I will do at some point. I might even do that later on in this video, just to see what the condition of that tyre is, because it looks quite new sort of all the way through here, but it does feel like it might have been worn on the edge there, and it'd be a good idea, I think, to get that out anyway and check it and just make sure that the spare is in a condition where it's viable, certainly before I take this car any significant distance. There we go, I decided to get it out anyway and just have a quick look at it. I'll probably check the pressure in it before I put it back. Yeah, that tyre wear is quite interesting on that outside edge. What is this? I think it's a Bridgestone. Yeah, it is. It's a Bridgestone Turanza E300. I don't think that's actually a bad tyre. But there's clearly quite a lot of shoulder scrubbing on that tyre. There's not a great deal of tread on the outside edge, which is quite interesting. Yeah. I don't know if that's just I might have to have a look at what the manufacturer's tread pattern looks like, but that's quite curious there as well. So yes, I don't know what yeah, I mean that's down to no tread at all on that outside bit of that tyre. So I think, yes, looking at that, while it might do in an emergency, I think we can add replacing the spare tyre onto my list of jobs to do. I think. I wonder if this was one of the wheels that was originally on the car then. Going by the wear, it makes me wonder if one of the steels that's currently on the car was perhaps originally the spare and they've just chucked this in. But yeah, it doesn't look like it's been on the car very much though. There's not a great deal. There's not a great deal of rust. The tyre was made. I'm actually going to do a video at some point about tyre codes, but so yeah, it says 022215, so that was made in the 22nd week of 2015. So that's a good way of figuring out how old your tyres are. But yeah, that's a shame, because otherwise the tread on that looked quite reasonable. But it's obvious at some point the cars must have had a fairly bad alignment issue, and it's just been driven and driven and driven on that. Yeah. I might risk that in an emergency, but I think it would be just that. It would be very much an emergency use only tyre, I think. Looking at that, so okay. If I do tyres, it will probably be 5. Either that, or if I do swap the B-rated tyres that are currently on it off, and this wheel is reasonably straight, which it looks like it is, to be fair. Can't see any evidence of any indentation. It's quite rusty on the inside, so I think this has been on the car. Yeah, if this one's reasonably straight, then what I might do is just take one of the best Samutos that are currently on it and stick that in the boot, and then that way, yeah, because there's no point in buying 5. They're perfectly good for emergency spares. I might even have them taken off and store them as emergency spares, to be honest with you. So yeah, I think that's what I'll do with that. If that wheel's straight, that one will go back on the car, and I'll take one of the others and make that a spare when I redo the tyres. Still handy to have. Obviously, whilst I've got this out, one of the other advantages of buying a P2 is they really generally don't rust very much. However, that said, there is actually an area of rust I'm going to show you on this later, which I think I do need to take care of. It's not quite in the usual place that P2s rust, but there's one spot on a P2 you never want to neglect, and that's any rust around the suspension struts. I've seen a few high mileage examples where the struts have actually rotted through, and that's really not ideal. But again, I'll show you where that bit of rust is, hopefully in a minute, and you'll see what I mean and what I'm going to do and how I'm going to tackle that. So yeah, I think cosmetically this is really not too bad. And like I say, I mean, I've been thinking about the trims. I think I could actually probably tidy these up without having to go to the trouble of buying brand new replacement ones in the same style. So I think if I stick with these, that is what I will do. I think one of them has got a bit of damage on it, but I reckon I can sort of tidy and patch that up with some proper plastic filler. I think it'll be all right. So anyway, that's pretty much the provisional cosmetics talked through, and I guess the best thing to do now is we'll get the bonnet open and I'll talk about the more important things, which is really the initial mechanical work that I'm going to do to it. I've had 3 of these and I still struggle to find that. There we go, stay. And the reason I say stay, one of the first jobs I've got, and I've got the parts actually ready to go on, is I'm going to replace these 2 tailgate struts, sorry, these bonnet struts. Common weak point, and before I start doing anything like servicing or any other work, checking spark plugs, engine mounts and everything else, it would be nice to have a bonnet that isn't going to whack me on the head. Just from a safety point of view, if nothing else. So I've got a couple of these. I've gone aftermarket, and like I say, I'll stick a video out soon about getting those parts fitted. So that's the first mechanical job I'm going to be doing. Second mechanical job, and I'll probably include some other footage or some slightly better footage shot on the mobile. When I got the car home, the steering got quite heavy in the last mile or so, and looking at it, and you may not be able to see on the GoPro, so if we can't see on the GoPro, I'll cut to some other footage now. You can see basically there's been a fairly good power steering leak. Now, one common problem on P2s is this return hose, or this suction hose here, which can leak. And when I very first looked at it, I assumed that it was actually leaking from the pump body, but it isn't. It's actually leaking from this return hose, and if you look, it's very loose, very, very loose indeed. And there's fresh power steering fluid there. Initially, I'm just going to tighten that clamp and make sure everything's topped up and see if that makes any difference, and then if not, I'll just order a new suction hose. Basically, I think the aftermarket ones are only about 16 quid from Parts of Volvo, so that's not too unreasonable. There is a tiny bit of leaking on the spindle on the pump as well. Again, that's not uncommon with these. I had a T5, I think it was exactly the same pump, and that was throwing a lot more fluid actually, so that's really not too bad at all. Another thing you may not be able to see with this camera, so I'll perhaps put it on another clip, is at some point this wiring loom has come loose, and basically I'm assuming because this belt can flap and jump around a bit, particularly if this freewheeling alternator pulley isn't in the best of health. It's actually caught some of the wiring down there. Now, it doesn't look like it's actually got through to the wires itself. I think it's just attacked this sort of plastic protective housing, but I really do want to do everything I can to make sure that those wires are sort of reprotected, possibly with a bit of tape or a bit of plastic wrap if I can get it. And then that these are cable tied nice and far back, because if I have got a condition coming up where this belt is jumping around, I don't want it catching these wires. It's quite a poor bit of routing, to be honest with you, in general, that bit of wire in there. I've seen similar things with these headlight wires getting caught before on P2s because of the proximity to this belt. So that's another sort of quick little job to do in the front of things over here. And then the other thing I've got ordered, Richard, the previous owner of the car, did a pretty extensive service when he bought it. So the only thing I'm going to do on the service that's due for now is I'm going to change the air filter. I bought some genuine 0W30 Volvo oil and a genuine oil filter, so I'll do a sort of a drop and refill on that, and that should then make sure that we're good for another 12 months on that side of things. One of the other things I'm going to do, although the cam belt's been changed, it was some time ago, so it was changed in 2014. I've not yet had the cover off to do an inspection of that. Again, I'll do that in another video. The previous owner, Richard, he did change the auxiliary tensioner and belt, and I think you've probably seen, if you've watched the V70 D5 high mileage hero video that I did, Belts on these, one thing you don't want to scrimp on. One thing that people often assume is that the cam belt's going to be the problem, and it's often not. Both the 5-cylinder petrol and diesel engines, quite often the auxiliary belt and tensioner is the Achilles heel, because if this belt snaps, it actually wraps around the bottom pulley and then bursts through the cover and into the timing belt. So you could have a perfectly good timing belt but still wreck your engine because the auxiliary belt is gone. So any noises in this area, any concerns over bearings, if you think your air conditioning pump is going to seize, or if you think if you hear any chatter or anything on the belt that might be down to this freewheeling alternator pulley, don't ignore it, get it done, because otherwise any investment you've put in making sure you've got your cam belt sorted can all too easily be wiped out by one of the ancillary drives blowing up. So again, it's just one of those things you want to stay on top of. I showed you the rear earlier on, and I was talking about strut tops and rust. So this all looks absolutely fine. There's no significant rust on either of them. I've checked them both. It's an area on P2s you don't want to ignore. If you see any bubbling or anything around here, get it taken care of straight away, because although it's quite good fixed steel, when these do go, and they quite often go due to degradation around the top bearing, things start moving around, they contact the inside of these strut tops and wear away the paint and protection. When they do go, they can go quite rapidly and quite badly, and obviously it's quite a complicated repair to get all this sort of, you know, cut out and welded in again. It's one of the things that more often than not writes P2s off, so keep an eye on those and make sure they're all right. These strut tops and everything else seem nice and quiet. In fact, I've not really noticed much in the way of clunks and clonks from the suspension at all, which is pretty good really, for a car of this age and mileage. Again, depending on how things go, I did refresh an S60 I had with some Bilstein B4 dampers previously, and that car had only done about, I don't know, 90 odd thousand miles, and it did make quite a big difference. So depending on how I get on with this and whether or not the XC60 goes, which it might do, depending on some other plans that I've got, if this becomes my main winter daily car, then I'll almost definitely refresh the suspension. That'll almost definitely include fitting it in the new set of wishbones. Again, you've probably not got the best view there. They are showing a little bit of sign of degradation. Not too bad, but a little bit. So I will probably get a pair of genuine wishbones for it at some point. As you can see, it's nice and dry under there. I've not got any major leaks that I can see anyway. At some point I will get the under tray off, obviously, when I do the service, and we can check things in a little bit more detail. Now, the one other thing I did forget to mention when I was going around the engine bay is I think I've got a loose heat shield. We'll do a start-up record in a minute and you'll hear it. Now, these Volvo modular engines are absolutely notorious for the studs that hold the manifold in for unwinding themselves. I don't think that's happened here because I can't hear any manifold noise as such, but I can hear a rattle. And like I say, my suspicion is it's just a loose heat shield. So I'm going to see, again, you probably can't see it down there, but there is a bolt, I think, that's sitting prouder than it should be, and it may just be a case of spraying a bit of penetrating oil on that and just winding it back up so that it secures the heat shield, and that may do away with the rattle. So sort of for initial shakedown work, that's pretty much everything up front that we need to take care of, and then we've got a couple of things to deal with round the back. Now, as seems to be traditional for me, I already have a nail in one tyre, or in this case it's actually a screw. Oh, that's good, it's actually I've managed to stop it where you can see it. So there's a screw in that tyre there. I need to get that fixed or replaced before I do any significant mileage. I think it's in a patchable position, to be honest with you, where it is on this wheel, so I need to get that sorted. And then the most important thing, and it's actually the reason that after driving the car back from Sheffield I've not really done much with it since, is I've got to sort out the exhaust hangers, and that's actually going to be a job for today that I'll include in another video in the future, and I'll show you that now. One thing I would say at the moment is I think the rear screen is missing a few things. But don't worry, I have placed an order with a certain popular web store, and the correct status on the back window will soon be restored. Right, anyway, so I hope you've enjoyed the quick walk around. I know I covered a few cosmetic things there, but really my priority at the moment is to focus principally and primarily on the mechanicals, and that's going to be in the form of getting the service done, getting the exhaust brackets sorted out, replacing those two bonnet struts so that it doesn't whack me on the head, and then I'm going to put the car through a bit of a mechanical shakedown and just see if there's anything else that requires immediate attention, because I think particularly when you're buying a car like this, it's all too easy to get carried away with the cosmetic stuff. I mean, I found myself looking at a different steering wheel for this last night, for instance, because the leather's faded on it. There's no point at all spending that kind of money changing things on this car until you know that everything mechanically is spot on. And whilst Richard has looked really well after it and he's sort of given me a list of invoices of bits and pieces he's done, and I'm sure it would cover decent distance, it's always a case of start with the mechanics and don't skimp on tyres, brakes, crucially, and then move everything else onwards from there. So like I say, next couple of videos will be tackling the key service items. I'll do a shakedown video where I take it out on my evaluation route and see if there's anything else that might crop up, and then we'll take things from there. So anyway, thank you very much for watching. Please do consider subscribing before you go, and like I say, I will see you in another one. Cheerio. Guess which idiot did go and buy a steering wheel?